Coming up, top law firms in the UK are accused of facilitating billions of dollars in fossil fuel transactions since 2017.
Behind every new oil and gas deal sits a lawyer.
One group of attorneys takes a side and vows to withhold their services from oil and gas companies.
I'm willing to do this kind of thing because I'm not willing to sit back and watch everything I love burn.
I mean, it's not often you hear about attorneys refusing cases as a matter of conscience.
These lawyers have been lining their pockets with vast amounts of money while other people die. I don't believe that is within the law.
A major win for environmentalists in France, and a world first. A ban on short flights between French cities takes effect.
Elle est essentielle et elle aurait dû avoir lieu depuis déjà longtemps.
But first, climate activists do the unthinkable and crash a live Premiership playoff rugby match in the UK. This is Just 2 Degrees on TRT World. Climate activists have taken disruption to a whole new level. At the end of May, they ran into the pitch of the rugby Premier playoff match in the UK between the Saracens and the Sale Sharks. It was a risky move considering how sacred rugby is to fans. Environmentalists justify their disruptive actions by saying we risk losing much of the life we currently enjoy because irreversible damage to the planet is an imminent danger. A recent study published in Biological Review says this is a looming reality and that we're entering a sixth mass extinction. For the first time, humans are the cause. The 5 previous mass extinctions were caused by natural phenomena. The last one was 65.5 million years ago and wiped out the dinosaurs.
From deforestation to make room for agriculture in cities, to global heating caused by the burning of fossil fuels, humans pose the greatest threat to our own world. Biological Review's analysed more than 70,000 species and says 48% of animal and plant species are declining, with only 3% of them on the rise. For decades, the International Union for Conservation of Nature worked on defining which animals were under threat. But the new study suggests that about 33% of species currently classified as non-threatened on the IUCN list are in fact heading towards extinction. Amphibians are among the hardest hit classifications. They face multiple threats, including disease and invasive species. Even though 380 new animals and plants have been discovered in the last 2 years in the Greater Mekong, which includes China, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, many of them are in danger of extinction. This is because the region is facing mass deforestation and pollution.
And as more people in a variety of professions choose to campaign for the planet, lawyers are also taking a stand.
The media would have you believe that it's not an emergency, that it's not urgent, that we don't need to do anything.
Since 2017, 2 years after the Paris Agreement,
2 years after we all knew an urgent and radical transformation and reduction of emissions was vital to our collective survival. Since that time, leading law firms have facilitated more than $1.6 trillion of fossil fuel transactions. The City of London has supported 15% of global carbon emissions around the world. Behind every new oil and gas deal sits a lawyer, and behind that lawyer sits a law firm, getting rich on those profits while other people die.
We as lawyers need to think about the cases that we're taking, and of course we need to ensure that we work for access to justice and we uphold our core values and duties of integrity, honesty and protection of the rule of law. But what does that mean in a climate emergency?
The choices we make this decade will have impacts for thousands of years, and I feel that I have to take a stand to do what I can to avert a global catastrophe.
We need to rebalance and come to terms with nature. We are part of it, and if we work together with nature, we will all thrive. This is a time to take a stand and to do what is right.
To get a better sense of this perspective, I spoke with Tim Crossland, a member of the group Lawyers Are Responsible, and one of the faces you just saw in that video. Tim also runs the organisation Plan B Earth, which is a charity taking action against the British government for betraying the Paris Accord.
What's your response of this news of a 6th mass extinction underway?
So I don't know if I regard that as news. I've been hearing about this for a while, and it's tragic. The 5th mass extinction was 65 million years ago. And to put that in some perspective, I mean, humans of any sort have only been on the planet for 2.5 million years. Homo sapiens, you know, what we are, that's just been 200,000 years. So it's totally outside our experience. And this 6th mass extinction, this is the first one to be caused by a biological species. This is caused by us. This is caused by humanity, our overconsumption, in particular the overconsumption in the global north countries, and an economic paradigm that actually says it's good to consume. What we're aiming for is economic growth. We call it sometimes GDP, don't we? Gross domestic product. What we're learning is that actually stands for gross destruction of the planet. I think that's what the 6th mass extinction really is here. And it is a crime not just against nature, it's also a crime against humanity, because if we actually understand what props us up and what we depend on, I mean, we're nothing without the ecosystems that sustain us. We're nothing without the waters, without the fish, without the plants, without the bees, without the insects. We're part of that web of life, and we're destroying ourselves as well as other life forms.
Yeah, and of course, it's all the power we've given big polluters as well. They have gone way beyond what they should have been given rights to do. And members of your group, Lawyers Are Responsible, have decided to withhold their services on new fossil fuel projects. I mean, it's not often you hear about attorneys refusing cases as a matter of conscience.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, the reputation, I think it's fair to say, as a lawyer, I can talk to this, is lawyers are hired guns. Show us the money, we'll take the brief, kind of thing. And you know, there's some reasons for that. There's some principles that we have in the British legal profession that's been a template for lots of other legal systems around the world. The common law, you know, you'll know about this in the Caribbean. A lot of the legal systems that are based on the British legal system, we have this idea that it is proper not to question your client. That is not our role. We're meant to be independent. We're meant to be, non-judgmental. Let's put it that way. What we had last September was 250 British lawyers saying, well, where we're heading at the moment, which is beyond 1.5 degrees warming, which is what the international legal agreement, the Paris Agreement, says we must limit ourselves to, partly because we know island states and coastal regions are going to go under beyond that limit, partly because we know beyond that limit, tropical regions of the world where nearly 4 billion people live are going to be too hot to live in. Well, beyond that point, it's not just mass loss of life, both human and other forms of life. It's also the collapse of the rule of law. So there's something going deeply wrong here if we have got a legal principle that says we must act for new fossil fuel projects, even when, according to the science, not according to us, not according to the radicals, according to the best available science, that is inconsistent with our future on this planet. And it's inconsistent with maintaining, the foundations of civilization, including the rule of law. So how can we as lawyers be undermining that?
Another stance you guys have taken is to never prosecute climate protesters. These days we've been seeing a lot of that in the UK, most recently in Germany as well. But if a government decides to initiate a law to stop, say, defamation of property or disruption to traffic, how do you fight that?
So there's another legal principle, isn't there, of equality before the law. We're all meant to be equal before the law. And if you look at what's happening at this moment, we've got people who are knowingly destroying the conditions which make our common home habitable. Because they've got the science, they've known this for decades, and they're doing it anyway. None of them are being prosecuted. We're not seeing the directors of the fossil fuel companies in the dock. And yet what we are seeing is the young people who are taking a stand for their own lives, for the people they love, for their brothers and sisters around the world, their global family, who are coming out and are resisting that destruction, non-violently, peacefully, taking a stand on behalf of life. And we're seeing them being prosecuted with increasing repression. In the UK, we've seen sentences of 3 years imprisonment just for getting on a bridge and putting down a banner saying just stop oil.
3 years.
Our friends, Morgan and Marcus, wonderful people, brave, courageous people. They climbed up a bridge, lowered a banner saying just stop oil, because our government is doing the opposite. It's accelerating the grant of new oil and gas licenses. And they've been sentenced, one of them, Morgan, to 3 years imprisonment, Marcus 2 years, 7 months. That's longer than somebody gets for a serious sexual assault. And if you think that what they're actually doing is taking a stand on behalf of us all, not just sounding the alarm, but resisting destruction, it is wrong. And as lawyers, it isn't our business to be doing what is morally wrong. There needs to be some connection between law and morality. Otherwise, the social contract breaks down. And what we would say is there are differences, aren't there, between different legal systems at different times. But any legal system that says people cannot defend themselves, people must simply lie down and accept their own destruction. Well, who's going to take that seriously?
Tim, considering this existential threat, not just we face, but future generations face, how close are we to being able to litigate against organizations that harm the planet?
So there's lots of litigation ongoing already. I mean, there's litigation against fossil fuel companies.
But these fossil fuel companies are working within the law, aren't they?
They're working within a legal system with close ties to the fossil fuel industry. And we can say that in particular where we are in the UK, in the City of London. There's a study that came out recently from law students for climate accountability, the top 55 law firms in the City of London since 2018 have supported £1.5 trillion worth of fossil fuel transactions. That's what they have facilitated. This is 3 years after the Paris Agreement that said we need an urgent and radical reduction of carbon emissions. These lawyers have been lining their pockets with vast amounts of money while other people die. I mean, as we know, people are dying now. People are being displaced now. Animals are going extinct now. These lawyers know all of that. And yet they are knowingly facilitating, finding the legal loopholes, using their expertise and talent to do something that is completely destructive. I don't believe that is within the law. I think there are many legal principles which tell us that you know that what you do is going to cause extreme harm to other people. That is not lawful. There are lots of different legal doctrines. However, if you have a system in the City of London where lawyers are bringing in that much money from their fossil fuel work, and then they instruct other lawyers, barristers, to go to court, those barristers become judges, you can see you have something within that legal system that has something a bit in common with the mafia, let's say, or organized crime. So even if the laws are there, they're not necessarily properly applied. And instead, laws are applied against the ordinary people of the country who are taking a stand against those fossil fuel companies. And that, to our mind, as lawyers are responsible, is not what the law is there to do. It's not there to privilege power and profit against the interests of ordinary people. It's meant to hold power to account. So that is why we've decided we've got no choice but to take a stand.
Tim, I can speak with you for hours about this topic, but I want to say thank you so much for appearing on Just 2 Degrees. You've been really enlightening on this. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Reagan. Take care.
Of course, there are lawyers who don't believe the profession has the right to refuse polluting clients.
The cab rank rule prevents barristers from refusing work because they disagree with the actions or views of those seeking their services. This does indeed have the result that people to whom a particular lobby object can still get the legal representation of their choice. It also guarantees that people who are accused of offences they did not commit can get legal representation by an advocate of their choice, no matter how appalling the offence with which they are charged. The cab rank rule promotes access to justice and promotes the rule of law. It is disappointing that some lawyers apparently wish to remove these rights from people of whom they disapprove. I would be profoundly unhappy if a climate change activist accused of a public order offence were ever to be precluded from obtaining the services of the barrister of their choice because their chosen barrister happened to disapprove of the particular way in which they had been protesting.
Big news out of France, where a ban on some domestic flights came into effect on May 23rd. Lawmakers there have been pushing to reduce carbon emissions, but the move has rubbed the airline industry the wrong way.
It's a law many activists say was long overdue.
Ou encore le fait de s'attaquer au trafic aérien de manière concrète et claire et de développer le trafic ferroviaire. Tout ça a été complètement évacué parce que Emmanuel Macron répond à son programme et à la campagne qu'il avait annoncée, c'est-à-dire répondre aux intérêts des plus riches et des multinationales. Or ça, c'est incompatible avec la réponse à la crise écologique.
An air travel ban applies to flights between cities reachable by train in less than 2.5 hours. It was passed by lawmakers in 2021 during coronavirus pandemic lockdowns. The change will affect most trips between Paris and regional hubs such as Nantes, Lyon and Bordeaux, with connecting flights unaffected. To accommodate passengers who would otherwise travel by air, the law requires train services to be frequent, well-connected and on time.
Non, je crois que l'aéroport et l'avion ne vont pas disparaître.
Et donc on a besoin de voir des projets. On va accueillir le monde entier pour les Jeux Olympiques et Paralympiques avec des Jeux Olympiques qui seront les plus écologiques possibles. Moi je fais en sorte par exemple que toute la logistique puisse passer par le transport fluvial au maximum sur les chantiers. Mais on aura des gens qui vont venir du monde entier évidemment par avion. Ce que je veux dire c'est que s'engager pour la décarbonation, ce n'est pas s'engager contre l'avion. C'est avoir des exigences. Je les ai posées sur l'aviation privée.
The French government had already secured Air France's compliance with the plan in exchange for a 2020 coronavirus financial package. However, critics say the cutoff point for train journeys does not factor in the roughly 3 hours it takes to travel from Paris to the Mediterranean port city of Marseille by high-speed rail.
En train. Et donc c'est pour ça aussi que dans le budget que je porte pour 2023, nous avons mis les moyens pour financer par exemple une ligne à grande vitesse entre Bordeaux et Toulouse qui mettra Paris à environ 3 heures de Toulouse. Là on pourra se reposer les questions, mais il faut faire les deux. Il faut développer les lignes de train, sinon c'est pénalisant et c'est une forme de déconnexion de certaines métropoles. Et ensuite on pourra avoir des exigences supplémentaires pour plus de villes et peut-être pour des horaires plus exigeants. Mais je crois que déjà faisons vivre cette mesure. Elle est nécessaire.
The airline industry is a big producer of carbon dioxide. Aircraft engines also emit nitrogen oxides, water vapor, sulfate and soot particles at high altitudes. Most European countries are racing to reduce their negative effect on the environment. In Germany and Spain, for example, greener rail journeys have been made cheaper, in some cases free. Even though these measures have not completely curbed airline emissions, climate activists at the very least appreciate getting people out of the air onto the rails. Dominic Brano-Mondi, Just 2 Degrees.
In some rural and remote areas, a reliable power supply is not always available. For those being treated in local hospitals, it can be a matter of life and death. In India, local people are finding solutions.
An expectant mother takes a much-needed break from the heat. Here in Raichur, in southern India, temperatures can reach 42 degrees Celsius, and with frequent and often hours-long power outages, a fan like this is considered a luxury. But not at this local government maternity hospital. To minimise the risk to patients, rooftop solar panels have been installed to provide constant electricity. It's drastically improved conditions for both workers and patients, and ensures vaccines and medicines are kept refrigerated.
ಸೋಲಾರ್ ಬರೋಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ ನಮಗೆ ಫುಲ್ ಕತ್ಲ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಯಚೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಫುಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಮು 4-5 ತಾಸು ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಪೇಷಂಟ್ಗಳಿಗೂ ತ್ರಾಸು ನಮಗೂ ತ್ರಾಸಿತ್ತು ಯಾಕಂತಂದರೆ ನಾವು ಡೆಲಿವರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಈಗ ಇಂಜೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಗುರ್ತಾಗ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅವಾಗ ನಾವು ಟಾರ್ಚು ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಪು ಅದನ್ನೇ ತಗೊಂಡು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ.
The hospital previously used diesel generators that released fumes dangerously close to newborns. But the solar panels, provided by the non-profit Selco Foundation at a cost of $8,500 and about $2,000 for smaller clinics, are not only good for the environment, but also the hospital's coffers.
When solar is installed, I observed 2 times, it's more of 50% reduced. We can save the cost savings also and the power also. That cost we can use for other purpose also, especially in health facilities we need many things. So that we can use for that.
More than 250 hospitals or clinics in the Raichur district now rely on solar technology to provide modern healthcare in remote and rural communities. As climatic extremes worsen in India, this maternity hospital is a prime example of a successful shift to renewables at the local level.
ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಕಾರಣದಿಂದ ಜನ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇನ್ನು ಮುಂದೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸರಿಯಾದ ಚಿಕಿತ್ಸೆ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೋ ಇಲ್ಲೋ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನಂಬಿಕೆ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಜನ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಸೋಲಾರ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆನೂ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಖಾಸಗಿ ಆಸ್ಪತ್ರೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಜನ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಆಸ್ಪತ್ರೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕಾರಣ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಹೋದ್ರೂ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಚಿಕಿತ್ಸೆ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಭರವಸೆ ಜನರಲ್ಲಿ ಮೂಡಿದೆ.
Oscar Sabakti, Just 2 Degrees.
That's how we end this episode of Just 2 Degrees. But before we go, take a look at these pictures of Mount Everest. Standing tall at 8,849 meters on the border between Nepal and China, it is the tallest peak in the world. The Shirma people call Everest Kumalangma, or Goddess Mother of the Planet. The goddess is losing her character. Warming temperatures are slowly widening crevices in the mountain and bringing running water to previously snowy slopes. 3 Nepali tour guides were killed this year when a chunk of falling glacial ice swept them into a deep crevasse. A study of Everest's Khumbu Glacier indicated it was vulnerable to even minor atmospheric warming. Everest is undeniably beautiful, but for how long?